back to Road Gang Radio. Join Jimmy Mack and Lindsay Lawler's Gang of the Airwaves by subscribing to Radio Nemo on YouTube.
We celebrate all kinds.
Make it official. After all, if you're listening, you're already in the gang. The Road Gang.
Yep.
Hey guys, remember this, I was talking about that Rebecca Brewster is one of the original founding members of the reconstituted Road Gang along with myself. Before we actually get to another original member of the reconstituted Road Gang, and I do include our next guest among that member along with his colleagues and what I call resident cantankerousness folks, Louis Pugh and Todd Spencer. I'll get to him in a second, though. Let's go back for just one moment to this great piece of research that our friends over at Atria put together at truckingresearch.org. They're looking at evolving truck driver demographics. One of the six challenges for women, one of the things they point out is the 6 challenges for women drivers: negative industry image and perception. You guys can, especially the people who listen to this show, the ones who comment on the tube of you are every single one of you is a terrific ambassador for the trucking industry. When I tell you the fact that since we've started this, Dre, we have never had to make a single phone call or a private message to any of these men or women to say, hey, that's not what this chat area is for, speaks volumes of what you guys are like as human beings. You offer your opinions. Sometimes they are pointed. Sometimes they are incisive. And sometimes I don't agree with them. I have never been like, not only do I not agree with that, that's just stupid. I'll use the word straight up. That's just stupid, and that is cruel, and I've never read a single thing like that. So you guys can have an effect on that. A lot of women are unable to complete truck driver training. That is not because of their failures as women. We've talked about that on Education Station. Unsatisfactory motor carrier company culture, inability to acclimate to the over-the-road lifestyle, limited parking and restroom facility access. By the way, Collin Long right now is going, oh my God, you have no idea. And excessive gender harassment and discrimination. All of these things, by the way, OOIDA is fighting for to make it easier for women to enter the workplace. So many of the reforms that OOIDA has going on right now, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association has going on, would have an absolute positive impact on at least 5 of these directly, and by probably proxy, the 6th as well. I said we had a regular recurring guest coming up here. I also said that he is one of the original founding members of the reconstituted Road Gang. He was one of my first phone calls when we made the leap in the other direction. It's my pleasure to welcome back our good friend Collin Long. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be back. I feel like it's been a while.
Yeah, and like I said, it's always good to have those original reconstituted Road Gang members kind of showing up and joining us on the scene. Dave includes you in that number too, which is much more important imprimatur than me. I'm going to actually make a large reach. If you would like to have a more diverse workplace, meaning a diverse workplace of American citizens, restricting the non-domiciled, the ability of governors to issue those non-domiciled or to write new ways that they have to be done would go a long way to creating an atmosphere in the industry that might attract a larger swath of committed and qualified people. Is that fair?
Yeah, I certainly think that's fair. I think that's a point we've been trying to make for quite a while, kind of indirectly. I mean, we've been leading with safety because we really think this is a major safety concern. But, everything in trucking is like the sweater with the loose thread. Once you pull one, they all come. And I think some of the unintended benefits of cracking down on non-domiciled or getting rid of it entirely would be what you're talking about. I think you would start to find folks who want to make a career out of trucking and want to be treated fairly and want to be trained well, getting behind the wheel rather than motor carriers capable of just finding anyone they can put in a seat and pay whatever they want and treat them however they want and just continue to churn through them through this non-domiciled CDL program. So yeah, I think there's many benefits to it. First and foremost is safety, but also improvements to the career of trucking and improvements that would affect not only the folks who are on the road currently, but the next generation of qualified drivers.
One of the things that I've always tried to do with you is I've tried to kind of let my own editorial stand on its own and not put you on the spot to even have to say I agree with something you said. That video which has made the rounds, of course, that painful video to watch him do that. And by the way, before anybody assumes that I have any sort of what I would call what I would call images that certain affect you in a negative way, remember that we are very close with the Punjabi Trucking Association. Before I say this, the gentleman in
Yeah.
that cab and the gentleman sitting next to him, before we even get to the dark moment that occurs on that forward-facing camera, which, by the way, he had a forward-facing camera. What the hell was he thinking? But the other thing is the fact that neither one of those men would be a good representative of the trucking industry. There was a surliness about them. There was an aggravation about them. You literally have the guy in the passenger seat has his feet up on the dash with no shoes on. I mean, it literally, even before we get to the moment of disaster, it is not a trucking finest hour. If you were like going to show people that, if you told people that was what trucking was before we even get to the illegal activity, the actual, what I call the active illegal activity, it is just a disaster in regards to the image of trucking, because it's all people see and they think that's trucking. It's a black eye, and when I say this, I don't mean that it's a black eye that somehow the good people of OOIDA, your members, and the responsible truck drivers caused, but it makes everybody look bad despite everything that they do on a daily basis to make themselves look good. Correct? Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think I think it goes beyond the conversations involving English language proficiency and non-domiciled CDLs to a much larger problem we have in the industry of people not wanting to start a long career in trucking because they don't think it is an option to be successful, and as a result, they don't take it seriously. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of motor carriers out there who are eager to get that type of person behind the wheel because they know they don't have to pay them well, they know they don't have to treat them well, they know they'll just be replaced with someone else down the road when they quit or leave the industry. And I think that's something that our board talks about all the time, is that, we have to properly train folks for the long haul career. And I'm laughing because I used the term long haul. I meant two definitions there. One, like, you're actually hauling long distance across the country, but you're also prepared to remain in the career long enough to become those 2 million mile safe drivers. And I think we've created this scenario in trucking where it's a race to the bottom as far as the next generation of drivers. And a lot of that is driven by large and medium-sized motor carriers who just want to continue the churn and continue to drive down compensation, investment in truckers for their training. And it speaks to a much larger problem in our industry that we've been trying to solve at OOIDA by enhancing training, by enhancing compensation, making sure you're paid overtime, all the things that would attract folks who will take the career seriously and who do want to be safe and successful. And it would help keep those folks who are currently operating successfully and safely behind the wheel much longer than they otherwise would, because they won't get burned out.
I'm going to say something.
Sorry, that was a very...
No. And by the way, I'm going to go to real left field here, by the way. So I won't name any names. I'm just going to simply say that when a person has a little more time on their hands and isn't, responsible for 3 to 4 days of programming every week and is only doing one show on Mondays with a lot of guests, but actually enjoying a form of semi-retirement, it means they have more time to look into things. And make this really clear that a lot of the what I would call reputable or big names in the fleet world aren't actually issuing these visas. But this person made a really good point. He said to me, and this was so interesting, don't you realize that when all trucking companies, or when certain trucking companies that have large sway keep their wages depressed, it is absolutely what allows people who do issue these sort of CDLs, these non-domiciled CDLs, to actually be competitive. The only shot you got is, in fact, if you can actually have no wage competition. If, in fact, the bigger boys would offer higher wages, it would squeeze these people out of the market. It really would. But they're able to keep their costs down. And that's, this is part of this, is the fact that they're... Am I making sense that what's happening here is that it isn't, like I said, I'm not accusing Carrier X of engaging in this sort of behavior, but by keeping their wages down, they actually leave the door open for folks like this to have a fighting chance to actually penetrate the market, because they're offering quote-unquote competitive wages.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally. And I often wonder, if large carriers weren't concerned about liability in hiring these drivers, how many would they be hiring? Because we know what they want as far as drivers are concerned. They want the cheapest labor possible. So, I think you're onto something. And that's any career, even outside of trucking. I mean, if it's always a race to the bottom, you're not going to get folks who are committed to safety and are committed to gaining enough experience and training to operate safely and make a long career in trucking. So no matter how you skin the cat, I mean, if you're constantly pushing to keep wages artificially low, you're not gonna draw the safest, most determined drivers who want to have a long, productive career, a long, safe, productive career in trucking. It's just not going to happen, and we're seeing it today. And OOIDA's been talking about it forever, and I think we're finally seeing a little bit of traction on Capitol Hill. People are realizing, well, if we continue on the path we're going, crash rates are going to remain what they are, turnover rates are going to remain what they are. Neither's great for safety, neither's great for the supply chain. So let's start fixing this problem, and it's not going to happen overnight. I think incremental success in improving the career, the appeal of trucking is going to take time, but I think we're starting to finally see things moving towards, well, let's start addressing these issues. And frankly, credit to the administration. They rolled out a big package of items they want to address to improve working conditions for trucking. I think that's a sign that there is an appetite here in Washington to start addressing the issue of training, of recruitment, of retention, of compensation, of working conditions. So things are moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, there's always these bad examples that have to be the impetus for it to happen. And it shouldn't be like that. I mean, OOIDA's been talking about these issues for years, and unfortunately it takes significant crashes that often result in fatalities for people to really take some of what we've been saying seriously, that's not unusual for any sort of lobbying organization when it comes to safety. But unfortunately, that's what we have to deal with, and now we're starting to see things move in the right direction. Unfortunately, because there have been some dire consequences.
By the way, our good friend Trucker Boson commenting on the chat says all CDL testing needs to be done at state-run facilities. Eliminate testing at the training centers. That would be a small first step in the right direction. There's going to be a lot of stuff on the conversational platform, by the way. We had Andy Polikoff, by the way, on the show the day after when all of this stuff began to unravel. And one of the things that he points out, this is a big kind of soapbox for me, Collin, and the idea that we are not all guilty, we are all responsible because somebody let that gentleman under the fence. Somebody gave that gentleman a CDL over in California. And by the way, before you just say, well, it's California's the problem, at any point before we get to that accident, there's a lot of people that could have stopped this. Somebody hired him. Somebody looked the other way when he showed up on a dock. Somebody kept looking the other way as he went down the road. Every single step of the way, there are a series of responsible parties that could have stepped in and stopped this from happening. They didn't. And this kind of speaks to that as an overall thing that, you know, minding your own business sometimes is not minding your own business. What you end up minding is you end up minding as your business slips through your fingers because somebody else gave the industry a black eye and killed your rates. The last thing I wanted to say editorial-wise before we actually talk about what it was the DOT did, I haven't lost that thread, Collin, is the fact that what people don't understand too, that there'd be a lot more gravitas and a lot more pressure on everybody and not just the administration if the bigger players in the field say, look, we're paying decent wages. We can't keep doing that if you're allowing this to happen. But the problem is that they're showing up and saying, well, we're paying wages that are competitive with those wages. It should be the exact opposite, where it's like the reason we have quality drivers is we pay really good wages. These are really bad actors trying to undercut the rest of the industry. Instead, it basically becomes an even worse form of the norm. Sorry, that's it. I got that off my chest. Let's kind of talk about what the DOT is doing here.
Sure. Real quick, I mean, people make mistakes. Unfortunately, this mistake was pretty blatant. You know, all of our board members have, have looked at the video, and everyone just says, you know, that's a mistake that no one who is properly trained and has experience behind the wheel would ever make. It was just so foreign to a lot of our members that it really helped me appreciate how bad things have become. And I think until carriers start addressing their turnover and start investing in drivers, we're going to continue to see this. I mean, the explosion of non-domiciled CDLs being issued right around 2019 opened a new candidate pool, and now we have large motor carriers on Capitol Hill saying we need 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I don't think anyone in the country wants 18-year-olds who just recently got their driver's license to be set loose behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound truck. So unfortunately, there's a lot of policies still being pursued in Washington that doubles down on these problems and doesn't make things better. But as far as OOIDA is concerned, I mean, we're battling against all that, and we're trying to improve training and improve retention and make the career more sustainable and safe for drivers. That's all I'm saying. But
yeah, and
DOT.
Yeah, go ahead, DOT. There you go. Yeah, get to it. Get to it. I did this to us, not you, by the way. Completely. I take full responsibility. See, I take responsibility, fellas. Go on.
And USDOT is taking responsibility. You know, they had their executive order saying, all right, enough is enough, states. It's time to start enforcing the English language proficiency rules that are on the books. And as a result, you should be putting people out of service who aren't capable of communicating in English because of its impact on safety. And we've been very supportive of that. I mean, there's no doubt OOIDA has been pushing for this rule and this regulation to be better enforced across the country because we're seeing the safety implications of not doing it. And I think more credit to the administration. They're taking a very hard stance against states that they perceive as not enforcing this ELP requirement and not putting folks out of service. And they've started with California, Washington, and New Mexico based on some of the data they've seen. It's clear these states aren't taking the requirements seriously, and they're threatening them to withhold funding for their motor carrier safety programs, which hopefully will get these states to start taking it seriously. And we understand there's obviously political dynamics here, but we don't think safety is a political issue. And we think there's a very clear need to enforce English language proficiency on our roads and to make sure that drivers who are incapable of communicating, whether it be reading signs that alert them to coming hazards or communicating with law enforcement or first responders after an incident, we don't think they should be behind the wheel. And we're not saying that forever, but get your proficiency up and there's a career waiting for you. But in the meantime, we need to start taking steps to reduce the number of incidents involving a lack of English language proficiency. And folks say, well, is that really happening? Of course it's happening. I mean, I think a lot of people suspect the horrific crash out in Colorado could have been prevented by English language proficiency. And now folks are taking a closer look at what happened in Florida as well. And it shouldn't have to take these catastrophic events for people to appreciate the safety value. I mean, think of how many have been prevented by enforcement of English language proficiency. And I think that's what USDOT is focusing on, and they're trying to get these states in line. And we support it. You know, we're right there with them. If you're not issuing any out-of-service violations for English language proficiency, there's probably something wrong because nearly every state in the country has.
I'm going to say something here really quickly, too, and you talk about the politics of the process of it. Like I said, I sometimes wish the administration, and guys, you can come at me about this, you can give us a call. I feel like that we have a blue state problem with non-domiciled CDLs, and we have a red state problem with agricultural factories and farms in regards to this entire game. And it feels like I said, maybe it's the DOT. And by the way, this is the DOT doing what the DOT should do. And this is not faulting the DOT, but this is kind of a pipeline in many ways. And the other thing my good friend said to me, whose name I won't mention, is he said, you realize that a lot of the people who actually engage in that non-domicile abuse, and because it's got a giant loophole that allows them to abuse them, this is just a couple of steps away from human trafficking. Let's be straight up honest about this. Look, I am not defending the man. I am not defending Singh. I am not, and I will not defend what happened on 70. But I will say this right now. I think the people who are engaged in this need to be called what they are. They're human traffickers. They are human traffickers who pay. That's what they are. They bring in people really, really cheap. They hold them by the short ones. They put them in trucks that they shouldn't be in, and they've basically got them. They've got a slave labor force, and that's human trafficking. Yeah. Let's call it what it is. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
To your point, something I noticed in DOT's announcement about this, and it was specific to New Mexico. It said that New Mexico allowed at least 7 unqualified drivers already found unable to meet ELP standards to keep driving and endangering the lives of others. And I read that and I thought, wait a minute, 7 drivers who have already been found unable to meet ELP standards, does that mean they were put out of service in another state and their motor carrier just put them right back out on the road? I mean, these are things we need to figure out. And the problem with non-domiciled, I believe, is that no one's really sure what's going on. We know they're being issued at increasing rates, and it's not just blue states, it's not just red states, it's states of every complexion are doing this. I think that's important to note, and we just need to figure out who are these licenses going to, who is seeking these licenses, how are they being treated. There's a lot to unravel here, and thankfully USDOT is doing an audit of the non-domiciled CDL program, and hopefully they are able to better get a sense of what's happening, because in order to address the safety concerns that are very clearly a part of this program, we need to understand what's actually being done and who is. I think the question is who is getting these licenses, because there has been an explosion in the last couple of years in states across the country in non-domiciled CDLs, and we can't even extrapolate where these folks are going to drive. Is it large carriers? We don't think so. Is it small carriers? Perhaps. Is it agriculture? I think a lot of folks believe that. We just don't know, and hopefully that's what the audit brings to light when USDOT is done completing it.
And I'm going to tell you this. I think it is incredibly sinister what's happening here. And by the way, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you that it's the Friends of Hugo Chavez. It isn't going to be like that kind of conspiratorial thing. I think it is a series of small companies that have basically you play whack-a-mole with, that you hit them.
Yeah.
And Showtime, one of our regular callers, I talk to a lot of drivers too, and they're aware of what's going on out there. I think what's happening here is that we're playing a game of whack-a-mole. They get them, they disappear, and then they pop up someplace else. They get them, they disappear. Yep. And I think sometimes they have shells waiting to be re-inhabited. I mean, like I said, there's something sinister here in the sense that, you know, people are using LLCs and they're using the corporate veil to protect themselves. I would not be surprised if there are places that understand that they're going to be shut down in a moment's notice and then literally pop up in a strip mall in the neighboring state almost immediately, and the party continues
Absolutely.
With the same employees. And that's sinister. Like I said, I think we should start calling these people what they are, human traffickers. And I've always said you don't need to have gunshots to be a gangster. And I think that there's some gangsterism going on here, and we should.
No, totally.
I mean,
really fair.
I mean, so let's go there, shall we? And if anybody is offended by that, please out yourself. Please tell me who you are that is creating shell companies and then popping up after you get shut down. I'm happy to have that conversation, and I can only hope the USDOT is listening to that conversation on the air when it happens.
Well, between listening to you and listening to my bosses, Todd and Louie, I mean, they talk all the time about raising the standards for new entrants into the industry, whether it be drivers or motor carriers, because we know these chameleon carriers are out there operating where you get into some trouble and you shut down and you relaunch a week later as some other carrier, and we need to combat that. We need to crack down on that, because clearly it's having a negative impact on safety, and we've been also supportive of increasing those barriers, making it more difficult to get into the industry. And it's kind of an awkward situation. I mean, we represent small business motor carriers. We certainly don't want to make it more difficult for our members to pursue their dreams of owning a small business motor carrier. But at the same time, I mean, our guys follow the rules. If you make the rules more stringent, they're still going to get their motor carrier. They're still going to start their business, and we'll help them do it. But it's got to be more difficult to get behind the wheel if you're a driver, and it's got to be more difficult to launch your business as a motor carrier, because it's just too damn easy on both accounts.
I have a phrase I think might make sense of what you're saying in a way that is really clear, because difficult, like I said, you even heard it when you said it. I agree with you, by the way. We need to make it more difficult in regards to process and easier in regards to cost.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. You should be a lobbyist here, in Washington for OOIDA. That was perfectly said.
I mean, and that's really what it kind of comes down to. And we can substitute the word difficult and we can put the word honorable in there. It needs to be more honorable to become a truck driver, because so many of the people who do it behave with honor. And it almost becomes a situation where that if you do it right, you have to do it with honorable character. That, that not doing it right means you are a dishonorable character, as opposed to leaving it so vague and easy that the dishonorable can actually make their way in. But I think we're onto something there. Less expensive, more difficult. And that it goes back to my theory on immigration, which is a very strong wall with a very big door and a more streamlined process to let people come in here and do what they have to do if they're willing to play by the rules and all that kind of groovy stuff. We're going to run out of time here. Of course, I always tell people to go to OOIDA.com. Where else can they go? There's a place they can go.
If you're interested in English language proficiency in the non-domiciled issue, check out fightingfortruckers.com. We're going to launch a page there that'll have all the information you need, as well as ways to reach out to your lawmakers. We sent letters to 43 governors last week telling them to suspend their non-domiciled CDL program. If you want to join us in calling on governors to do that, visit fightingfortruckers.com, and you can do it in just a couple of clicks or taps on your phone.
And by the way, if you want to follow the most honorable truck driver in the known universe, even better than the ones on Zebulon 5, you can always find Marty Ellis on all the socials, because he's out there fighting the good fight and telling a good story. And actually, really, along with Dean Croak, I would tell somebody if they were just getting into trucking, I'd say, go check out the content of Dean Croak and go check out Marty Ellis, man, because what a great spokesperson for the trucking industry as well, too.
Absolutely.
There's so much more to talk about, but of course, founding member of the Road Gang, reconstituted, Collin Long is here. What are you doing for Labor Day? What's going on?
My annual trip to the beaches of Cape May, New Jersey.
I don't want to make any disparaging comments because people don't realize there's some really beautiful areas of New Jersey. Please tell me that's one of the beautiful areas of New Jersey.
It's the southernmost tip, so I say that the highway that goes down the stretch of the New Jersey shore serves like a filter, and by the time you get to Cape May, it's beautiful.
What is it? It's the highway serves as the choke point to the stupidity of what Jersey can be and gives way to what Jersey should be. Thank you, Collin Long, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. Collin Long, the Director of Government Affairs over at OOIDA.com. You can find them on the Book of Face, the Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, the Tube of You at Truckers OOIDA, and OOIDA Truckers on the gram of InstaTray. Hit it. Just make that happen.